And all the hours we spent together, I wonder will our lives still change?
Hey.
Andy. Good.
What's up, man?
I'm just, you're on the road.
Yeah, me too.
Good to meet you. Good to talk to you in person finally.
Yeah, it's been a while. It's crazy, you know. I've been over to your parents' house a bunch of times. Hung out with your brother since middle school, and yeah, this is probably the first time we've crossed paths.
I know.
But I've certainly heard the legend.
Oh God. Oh God, no.
Well, you got to remember, you know, like that's always the case with sort of the younger brother and the kind of younger generation.
Sure.
You were already out of high school by the time we entered South Lakes, right?
Yeah, I'm 6 years older than Derek, so I definitely would have beat him by a punch.
Right. So, you know, things get built up after 6 years, for sure.
That's funny.
And the fact that you were, you know, kind of cool older brother, drummer, you know, off at college, like none of that hurts.
No, it doesn't. Being a drummer never hurts. You might have to deal with some stereotypical jokes sometimes, but it's definitely not a bad thing to be a drummer.
So, you know, you are the first, the second set of brothers that I've had on interviews on the podcast. And there does seem to be something about these musical families in Reston. And brothers also, because almost everybody that's been on had practically had an older brother or younger brother. What was it that made your family so musical? Because as far as I know, neither of your parents play any instruments, right?
No, my mother at one point in her life dabbled in a little bit of guitar and piano, but not much to speak of. My dad has no musical ability, and even among the extended family, for the most part, at least on my mother's side, there's not a lot going on in terms of being a musician. So it is just funny how it worked out that way, because I basically found the inspiration to myself living on a street with, basically a street of kids I wasn't playing too much with anymore. You get older, and you lose interest in a lot of common threads. So I just found music to be a really good thing to pursue, and I got the bug, and that was all she wrote. And then Derek, when he got a little older, had more of an interest in music that I didn't know very well. He was always in hip-hop, and, that was the go-go scene coming up at that point. So I really don't know how it all came about. I guess it just did.
When did your parents get you your first kid?
I was 13 or 14, so we're talking about 1983 or 1984, and they did the right thing because I showed this interest in it, and of course when you show an interest in playing drums, they want a drum set right away, and my parents had the foresight to say, well, let's get him some lessons, let's see if he can play one drum okay, and then if he shows a discipline for it, then we'll go from there. And I had some good teachers in the early days, and they told my parents he really has a knack for it, and he seems very dedicated. So my early teachers encouraged my parents to support me however they could, and to this day they have still supported me. So it's wonderful.
Where did you take lessons from?
My first lessons were in, my first lesson was at the Music and Arts Center in Oakton. And I'm Music and Arts is basically everywhere these days, so I don't know if it's still there, that location. But my first teacher was a lady named Sherry Clark, and I studied with her for maybe a year and a half. That was my first teacher.
And then who did you go on to work with?
Let me see. I studied with a D.C. guy named George Shepard, who was a lifelong student of the great drummer Louis Bellson, who gave me some good guidance. And then my real formative years of high school, I was actually splitting time between two teachers. So I had two lessons. One was with a guy named Hal Howland, who, if you look back at the history of Northern Virginia music, was a very, very important figure in terms of not only being a band leader, he had his own jazz ensemble, like a small group. Very prolific writer for Monitor Magazine and Local Times. And he has since relocated to Key West, Florida. He's been there for a number of years now. But from him, I learned more about reading, interpretation, different styles, but not only drum set, but snare drum, timpani, mallets. He really got me ready for my college years. And then through high school, I studied with a guy named Dan Helm, who was much more of a drum corps, chops guy, like real rudimentary. And he really got me ready in that regard. So it was really two different kinds of teachers at once, which was great.
Who were your drum heroes?
Well, like most, let's be honest, white kids growing up in suburban America, Neil Peart was kind of the big guy from Rush for so many of us. Just to see this cool-looking guy with all these drums playing these amazing things. And my parents got me into guys like Buddy Rich, who I knew from a very, very young age. And I kind of went across the normal path of most drummers, is that maybe you're at first attracted to the rock stardom or the speed or all the, the guy who can play the most is the best. But then as you get older, the more importantly, if you start working, you're actually trying to make money playing, you realize that playing those big bills you hear on the records will not work well when you're trying to make people, stay on the dance floor. So I probably have an endless list of drummers I admire. Usually I gravitate towards ones that you can tell it's them in the first, 5 or 6 seconds. They're very unique in their playing. They're still servicing the music. So, I'm thinking of guys like Mando Cache, who made a name for himself in the Miracle in the 80s, and Jeff Porcaro, who played on so many records that it's easier to say who he didn't play with. It runs the gamut. It really just, it's everybody.
Well, so how long was it that you were playing before you were actually looking to form your own groups?
I would say I probably ate it up for maybe 2 years of just playing in the basement along with records. And then you meet kids who have been playing around the same time as you, as long as you have. And if you like the same bands, you get together. And we all have those experiences of playing in someone's basement, and just playing the Led Zeppelin, playing the Rolling Stones. And I really think about that point in the mid-'80s, what we call classic rock was finally coming into play. There's not a lot to do with that music, so we found ourselves going backwards, where you actually heard guys playing drums. Because those were songs you could just play with the guitar player, bass player, and a drummer.
And so where did you find those other kids?
Well, one thing to note is that I know this is a South Lakes-focused show, is that I actually did not go to South Lakes my first high school. I went to Gonzaga College High School in D.C. my first 2 years. And that was kind of, a 2-hour commute each way, but then I transferred back to the Reston area my junior year, which was great because I never had to be a freshman. I could just be a transfer. So that was kind of cool. So I really hooked up at the time with a guitar player named Adam Friedman, who I've lost contact with. And he had a friend named Ryan Welch, who really has become a lifelong friend to me ever since. And Ryan and I really had a lot of the same interests musically. And he had his, a basement set up for bands. His mom was very, very cool with letting us make all the record we want. So it was Ryan Welch, and we got together with a kid we knew named Josh Goldman, who was a great guitar player, and a friend of mine from my Gonzaga days would commute out to Reston from McLean named Peter Forgercher. And if you find one who's good and knows how to work his keyboard, it really opens up the palette. So those were the ones I can think of right away that I was playing with a lot. I know I'm going to leave people out, but then we got a guy named Dennis Freeman, who was a year behind us, who was a singer, and he was in all the choir groups and everything, but he loved rock and roll. He loved, he loved Fugazi, he loved Queen. So he was a singer, and we just did whatever we could to just play as much as we could. And the highlight of my youth there, I remember growing up to seeing the Reston Festival over at Lake Ann Center, I believe. And that was always my dream, to play the Reston Festival. Small dreams, what are you going to do? But they're attainable. So, during our senior year, we got to play the Reston Festival, and it was a lot of fun.
Who had you seen playing the Reston Festival before you guys?
I can't remember, honestly. I just saw grown-ups, I saw rock bands, I saw go-go bands, I saw jazz groups, I saw cover bands, both originals. And it just seems to be, wow, they're playing in front of all these people. We're talking maybe 100 people, but still, when you're 15, 16 years old, that's everything. But like I said, it's something you could actually do. We're not going to open for Metallica, but you can play the Reston Festival.
What do you remember from when you played the Reston Festival?
I remember being very tired. I can't remember why. I think everybody had something earlier, like the day before at the school. And it was a lot of fun just getting my drums out there and just to see familiar faces, because, to see either your girlfriend or your other friends from school or your parents out there, and they like what you're doing and you feel you're playing well. And I can't remember if we sounded good or bad. Who cares at that point, You're just out there doing it, and, the next day you'll be back to playing in the basement, but for that one day, you're playing in front of, a lot of people who probably would never see you otherwise.
When did you guys become Illusion?
Illusion came about, I really think that now I could be wrong here if you speak to anyone else who remembers. I think that band was formed with the whole idea of playing jam for man. Is that the guy who played guitar in Illusion is a guy named Victor Harvell. And I really think it was his project to put together. So just from that picture you showed me, it's me, Ryan playing bass, Dennis on vocals, and then Victor playing guitar. And my best recollection, obviously going back a long time, was that it was kind of set up just to play some songs for that show. I honestly do not recall anything else we did. But that's how it is. You make a band to do something, and then you move on to something else.
And so it was more your dream to play the Reston Festival than Jam for Man?
Well, I think the Jam for Man came about when I was already well involved with every other thing I was doing. I didn't, spend my younger years seeing Jam for Man, but I did see the Reston Festival. So I think the Jam for Man might have taken on more meaning and more clout after I was gone, if I could be honest, my best memories.
Well, what was it like when you played?
Very loud, I think. And it was one where they had to have bands come and go kind of quickly. So you'd be in the middle of your second song, and they're already asking you to wrap it up. You know how it is with this kind of shows. But I remember feeling that we played well. I think we played at the Reston Town Center. And we're not talking, state-of-the-art PA or monitors. So...
You mean the community center?
Sorry?
The community center or the town center?
I want to say it was the community center.
Okay, because you said town center for a second. And
I'm sorry. But yeah.
And those, I think they listed the guys that you said you went on to continue playing with. I don't remember seeing you playing with Victor after that, but I think you mentioned to me that you continued to play with Ryan, right, and with Dennis.
Dennis, like I said, I mean, I graduated with Ryan. Dennis stayed and did this thing. I went to James Madison after graduation. Ryan went to the New England Conservatory to be in a composition major. So during our college years, Ryan and I still played a lot together. The most thing we did the most was called, totally boastful, the Fearless Jazz Trio with a guitar player named Scott Dennett, who was a year ahead of us. And he was a fabulous jazz player who's still very active. He lives down in Florida now. And we just had this, kind of fusion, heavy rock, jazzy, progressive trio, just playing as fast and loud as we could around, different time signatures. So we did that throughout the college years. But Ryan and I stayed together through that. And Ryan has lived in California for the last, well over probably 10 years right now. But we still stay in touch occasionally.
And what else were you studying at JMU?
Well, I was a music major with an emphasis in the music industry. So in addition to taking ensembles and voice lessons, I also had to take accounting, management, marketing, and then some real specialized music courses, music merchandising, music marketing, audio production, classes like that. So it was basically just living and breathing music 24 hours a day.
What was the thought process there? Like, what did you want to do with that?
Well, I guess like many naive college people, you kind of have big dreams of just being a successful musician. But, you realize that it's a very, 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 very hard way to make a living. So I still wanted to be in the music industry. I didn't really want to work for a record label. I didn't want to be a copyright guy or anything, but I did know that I really like equipment. I've always loved gear, particularly drum gear. So I thought, well, let me, get my chops up as much as I can, and then probably pursue a career in the music instrument world, whether it be through sales or manufacturing or product development, items like that. And then that's basically been my whole working career, is either being behind the drum counter or selling products on, mail order centers or internet sales. I was with Sam Ash Music for 10 years, both in sales and then part of their purchasing department, marketing department. And the last 10 years, I've been an inside sales guy for Daria, which is the largest manufacturer of guitar strings in the world, also violin strings, woodwind reeds. We have our Evans drumheads, Pro-Mark sticks, other companies they acquired. So I've just been around either playing or selling or teaching my whole life.
Well, so it seems like that degree paid off.
Well, it's nice to be doing what you studied to do. I know that most people don't end up doing that unless you become a medical doctor or a lawyer. So I feel fortunate in that regard.
That's cool. What was your general take on the music industry and your experiences with the music industry itself? Well,
it seems that people are always hearkening back to the good old days. I think that sometimes things are never as great as you think they are, and they're never as bad as you think they are. And that might be translatable to many industries. I think that product innovation continues to be amazing. The used equipment market is gigantic. Used guitars are still very, very, very popular. I have all the faith in the world of the musical instrument field. What worries me is the so-called record business, because once the file sharing started, I don't know how labels make any kind of money if they're even existing. You just have to the product's so different now. And we all grew up going to the South Lake Center Kentmore Records. Was that the record store at the time?
Oh yeah.
And that was a whole Saturday. Now you
Yeah.
just sit at your couch going to Spotify or Pandora, and different world.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's been a while since I set foot in a record store. And, I would not, years ago, I wouldn't go a week without going to a record store. And I think that's a very common refrain with a lot of people.
Well, there's a wonderful aspect to it, and I know that they're still out there. You can find them in New York City or any metropolitan area. And I was just at my brother's just a few weeks ago meeting my niece, and he has in his basement, he has his record collection there, and I was there for a while, and I was looking through his records, and I remember what that's like to look across and see one you like, pull it out, look at the sleeve, read the liner notes. You don't get that from pointing and clicking. You just don't.
Yeah. Your brother's record collection is one of my favorites to go through also.
Mm-hmm.
So I noticed on one of your drum heads in a picture on your site, you have Face First on there. Was that another band that you were involved with?
Well, that's one I'm involved with now and kind of recently. Right now, I'm currently in 3 bands. And what I like about them is that they're all very different. Is that the band you're referring to, Face First, is much more of a straight-ahead 80s, 90s pop rock group, 4-piece. And then another one is called Southern Guns, which is a straight-up Southern rock band, no frills, straight-up Southern rock. And then the band I've been in the longest out of these 3 is called Harper's Ferry, which is more of an Irish-American bluegrass country classic rock group that's made up of a 6-piece group with a fiddle and mandolin and everything like that. So it's nice to have a different hat floor each time I go out.
And how often are you guys getting together, and how often are you playing gigs with all these 3 bands, and you have a family and a full-time job?
Yep.
That must be hard to maintain all 3 at the same time.
It comes in ebb and flows. You might have one month where you have at least 1 gig every weekend, and you might have a month where you don't have anything at all. I had 2 with Southern Guns last weekend. The Saturday before that, I played in the daytime with Harper's Ferry, then played at night with Face First. So, I just have to make sure I keep myself healthy and remember which bass drum I had to have on the front, because you don't want to have the wrong one on.
Definitely. Or you don't want to get confused and start playing like Harper's Ferry songs at a Southern Gun show.
Right. You really know where you are.
Those are definitely very different bands, for sure.
That's why I like it.
Do you have a connection to Irish music heritage? Where does that come from?
Well, Derek did the genealogy study of our family. I think he said, and I'm probably wrong, I think we're a good percentage Scot-Irish. I mean, not full-blooded, but a good percentage. The Irish part of the lineage probably goes up to the northeastern part of the island, and then a lot of Scotland after that. So a little bit across there. And the guys in Harper's Ferry, some are more Irish than others, but it's music that has a place, in Long Island particularly. And we were actually all able to go play some dates in Ireland last fall, which was a trip of a lifetime. A lot of us took our families, a bunch of us went, did a bunch of sightseeing, and played about 5 or 6 shows.
This morning before Judge O'Shea, a child I had to appear. And the judge, he says, you, me young fellow, the case against you is quite clear. For you went and parked in front of the recovery room and didn't pay the meter. So my son, you see, I'm gonna take your cash and you'll just go away with your fears. Her eyes, they shone like diamonds. That's all right. I think she was queen of the land. And her hair all over her shoulder. Tied up with a blackberry band. So come on, you jolly young girls, I'll have you take more in from me. It's whenever you're into your liquor, your lands, beware of the pretty Colleen. Maureen, Versophilia with whiskey and porter and St. James, until you're not able to stand. And the very next thing that you know, me lads, you landed Van Diemen's Land. Over eyes they shone like diamonds. You'd think she was queen of the land. And her hair hung over her shoulders.
And what I learned from that is that when you're playing a pub in Ireland, they don't want to hear Irish music. They hear it every day. They don't want to hear those songs. But if you play American rock and roll, they go crazy.
Well, maybe you should have brought Face First over there instead.
That'll be next year. Good point. That'll be next year.
So, okay, let's go, because we got kind of chronologically out of whack for a second. I've brought up your newer band. How do you get from college at JMU to Long Island? How do you go from that period in college to now musically?
Well, we have to insert a couple of years there. Is that after college, well, the last thing I did for James Madison, I did an internship with Yamaha. And at the time, their offices were in Grand Rapids, Michigan. So the summer of 93, I lived in Michigan to do my internship. And then when I had certification that was complete, I was able to graduate. So I graduated the fall of 93 back at JMU. And I got a job offer right away to work at a store in Tampa, Florida. You know, not many bad place to live, you know, like Florida. So I basically hauled ass down there, worked in the store for about a year and a half or so, and then got an offer to basically live my dream and be a full-time musician. And even though it's a hard thing to make a living at, when you're 22, no real responsibilities, health insurance be damned, you can do it. So I basically played 6 days a week of classic rock, 80s rock, 90s rock, dance music. I worked a lot with different bands for about maybe a 2.5-year period. And after enough time of that, you kind of get tired. You feel yourself, you might be developing bad habits, you get tired of it. So I got a regular job again and decided to move up to New York because I felt, it's very easy to get lazy wherever you are unless you have a real reason to stay there. I didn't have a reason to stay in Florida. So moving to New York, I first lived in Brooklyn for about a year and a half, trying to see what I could in the city. And as everybody knows, it's very, very expensive to walk down the street, let alone seeing bands. But I was able to go to jazz clubs, see some Latin bands, really loved it. And then life just took me out to Long Island and still work with the typical cover bands to make extra money on the side and just have fun playing. And, I was never not in a band, I feel. And it's always been more on the rock side. I'd like to see if I can get some jazz work later in my years here or, try to develop more of a style for it. But it's really just staying active and staying respectable and professional and dependable. I mean, that's, you can be a good musician, but if you're a pain in the neck to deal with and you're not taking care of yourself or your gear, you will not be working.
What were some of your favorite New York clubs to play?
Well, I'm proud to say I did play CBGB's before it closed. I got to be on the same stage as, literally probably a million bands that played, including some of the greatest. Kenny's Castaways was fun to play. That was also in the Village. I know that Bruce Springsteen had played there in his youth, the Smithereens. And unfortunately, all those places are gone. So I don't know where you play in New York City anymore. I really don't. Not in terms of rock, not in terms of rock and roll. But those were two that stuck out, but I got to play CBGBs for sure.
Yeah, I mean, maybe if you're bigger, you can play the Wetlands or Roseland Ballroom or, places like that.
Yep.
I know my buddy was playing with some guys and played the Bitter End. That club's still around.
Yes, it is. Exactly. Yeah, you're right. That's a couple of coworkers of mine play there quite a bit.
And that place is cool and has a deep history also.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, I've never lived in New York, even though people think I'm from New York because my parents are from there and I root for all the New York teams. I've never really spent a lot of time, being there and being able to go to a lot of shows there. So I'm always jealous of people that have been able to live in New York and also not just live there, but also play music there.
Mhm. But I will tell you, not to be a spoiler, but the romance of playing Greenwich Village wears out quickly when it takes you almost an hour to find a parking spot. I mean, that's one thing. If you're a drummer, it's hard to just hop on the subway. You have to, even if you're just bringing some of your kids, you have to take the car. So I'm really, it was fun when I did it. I like to be able to pull my car up right to the club or the bar and unload right there and call it a day. Having to, write down where you park so you can remember later is not fun. Not fun at all.
Well, that's always the issue about being the drummer in any band, is that you're the guy with the most gear.
We're the first to arrive and the last to leave.
Yeah, and you're the ones that have to deal with that and make sure that you're always watching your stuff too. It's it's not easy to gig as a drummer.
No.
There are a lot of places, there are a lot of places that have a backline or whatever, have amps where, a guitarist can just bring his guitar and just plug in and play.
Well, those backline house kits, unless they've hired a reputable cartridge companies, if it's one that's been there since the 80s, we're talking a long night. A long night of trying to make them sound good. But hey, what do you say? It's a life we chose. What
kind of kit do you prefer to play?
Well, I own two right now, and just like the bands, they're both very different. My main kit for most of my work is a Yamaha Recording Custom that I got in the 90s. It's not the biggest kit in the world, but I can cover most things with it. And then Harper's Ferry, I have a Natal Cafe Racer kit. It's more on the smaller side. It's very small bass drum, very tight and compact. I can fit in corners easily. So, at one point I think I owned 5 different kits, but then you get cut down on life, cut down on space. So the two I have are going to last me a long time.
And did you have to learn, did you have to adjust your style considerably to fit that kind of music? I mean,
well,
imagine the other two bands, it comes to you totally naturally.
Well, there's a discipline and a liberty to where if you're playing Irish music, we're talking authentic Irish music, it's not as if you can buy a record and you're hearing drums on it. You're hearing acoustic, you're hearing, Irish instruments. It's all very folk. So if I'm going to play drum set, I have to come up with my own part. And basically, my job in Harper's Ferry is to keep everybody else in line time-wise, like rhythmically. So it's fun to play a show where I might not pick up sticks except for 3 songs. I'll be playing with brushes or mallets or, they call these sticks rods or little dowels bound together. They're not as lot of sticks. So I find it very refreshing to where it's a different kind of gig. And although if we play classic rock, that's the same thing. If we play some country, there's drums on that. But it's been fun for me to come up with supportive parts that are not on the original recordings.
And in terms of recordings, how many of those bands? It sounds like you've been in almost maybe a dozen or more bands throughout your life. How many of those bands did you actually record with?
Less than one, less than two. That's the one thing in my career. I'm not really on a lot of, Fearless cut a CD years ago, many years ago. I don't even know where my copies are. If I can find one, I'll mail it to you. I don't even remember how it sounds. But, when you're just a working band on the weekends, unless someone films you for YouTube or something, you're really not laying it down. You don't even have to go and record a demo record. You can just film yourself with a high-res, whatever you're using, and it'll be the same event. So, unfortunately, as much as I played, I am not on a lot of material, which is something I regret because I love to have things to look back on and say, oh, okay, that's me. I just have memories of playing them, not actually recording them.
So you never wanted to go into the studio with any of those bands and try to properly get it down?
Well, I didn't really feel the need to go and record with the cover band. I did want to work with the original artists and play on their records. And I got a little bit of work when I first moved to New York because that was kind of my dream, was to be a studio musician, because the guys I admire so much were on so many records, or, they're the guys who could do it very quickly, get in and out in one or two takes. That was kind of my dream, but life took me a different way. And now, just like we talked about, the record business, that's almost there are still people doing it, but it's a handful of what it used to be. So, now, not to say if I got a call from somebody, could you play on my demo, I'd be there in a heartbeat. But those opportunities just have not presented themselves to me.
What about you sent me one cut from a pretty loud rock band.
That was Fearless. That was the quote-unquote jazz trio. And that showed you the direction that went in. Not exactly, Duke Ellington, I know. It really went to a different direction. It was very grungy.
Those are the same guys, huh?
That's Ryan and Scott. That's them.
Sometimes you never see it. Sometimes it breaks you down. Sometimes it's much too often. I'm just a fucking clown. I took you to a party and I got wicked stoned. I guess that's when I noticed I would leave alone. But I don't mind drinking on an empty stomach. I don't mind sleeping in an empty bed. You don't mind making me an empty promise. You don't mind thinking I'm an empty head. An empty head. Try to forget about it. It often makes me bleed. I'll make a couple phone calls. You're just what I need. The times are getting tougher. I gotta make things right. I saw you at a party just the other night. Well, I don't mind drinking on an empty stomach. I don't mind sleeping in an empty bed. You don't mind making me an empty promise. You don't mind thinking I'm an empty head. I don't mind drinking on an empty stomach. I don't mind sleeping in an empty bed. You don't mind making me an empty promise. You don't mind thinking I'm an empty head. An empty head. An empty head.
Wow. Okay.
That was a song called Empty Head, which was, it still sounds good to me. That video came across. I'm like, wow, that sounds pretty good. That's pretty good.
Great. I think that's actually a great cut.
Mm-hmm.
I'm surprised that that you guys weren't trying to take that a little bit further or push that, continuing in that direction.
Well,
seem very successful in that direction.
Well, we were all in New York at that time, and we did play some shows. Let me think. Acme Underground. We played. There was a bar called Spiral. We played, and unfortunately, the passion we had for it did not register in the faces of the people watching us at the bar. So, it's just you give it your best shot, and that's the story of life in the big city, where there are thousands of bands that come and go in a heartbeat. So we did some good work. I thought there was some good stuff going on there, but it just went the way it did.
Well, it sounds like also if you had just been playing that one genre, you might have gotten bored with that too.
That's possible, yeah.
It sounds like you were really pushing the boundaries of, of different genres of music together.
Mm-hmm.
When you're playing, kind of fusion jazz rock, and lots of different time signatures and everything like that, it's hard to just go back to 4/4 straight ahead rock after that.
It can be, but you have to take your ego out of it and just play for the music and have fun. And that's why I think it's it's important to be playing with good musicians, but you have to like each other a lot. There was a great documentary that came out last year called Hired Gun, and they interviewed all these different rock stars and the people who play with them on the road. And what you heard over and over again was you can find a good player anywhere, but you have to find the right player. So if I'm in a simple rock band, but it's cool people who know what they're doing and are competent and they're easy to get along with, it really doesn't matter what the style of music is. You can make it challenging however you like. I think a lot of musicians go through play as many notes as fast as you can. And now I'm very, very happy just laying down a good beat that gets the dance floor going and you get everybody smiling. I never got paid because I could play a solo. I never got paid because I could play a fill. I got paid because I could keep it together.
And so what do you still want to do musically? What are, some dreams or experiences that you haven't had yet that would be cool? Wow,
that's a good question. Well, both Prince and James Brown are no longer with us, so I can't play with them. So that's not going to happen. Maybe circling around. I would really like to be on a recording of an artist, even just like a good demo, just someone who's got some good songs, and I could help them to at least take care of the drum track for them. Like I said, something to have tangible to say, hey, this is me on this, or listen to these great songs I'm playing. I try to keep it very simple. Life's complicated. Life's busy. So I think that for all the years I've been playing, and the probably thousands of shows I played, there's maybe like less than 10 that really stick out so, strongly in my mind of being so good, whether it be how I felt I played, how I felt the band sounded, how I felt the audience reacted, or just the overall vibe. Those can be few and far in between. So if anything, my goal would be to be on someone's project that's really good, and also keep getting those memorable gigs that can be hard to find. You don't plan for them; they just happen, and when they happen, they're the best. They're the best.
Is the Reston Festival up with that? Is that top 10?
I think it would be. I think so, because that was the first real, thing I did. I'd been in, high school concert band, jazz band, where you play a lot of people. That's different. This was your own thing. So yeah, I think going back, that will be one of them. I can't remember if we sounded good or not. I don't remember. It was more just a day, like I said at the beginning of our conversation.
Well, so taking it back there, how do you think that growing up in Northern Virginia and playing music there kind of influenced the rest of your music career?
Well, I was fortunate enough to be around people who brought different kinds of music to me. Even though you'll have shared interests or share your favorite bands, they're going to know something you don't and turn you on to something good, and hopefully do the same for them. And, it's a great place to be, to where, instead of us getting into trouble or causing problems, we got together in basements and played rock and roll. And I hope that kids are still doing that. I mean, I know people in my neighborhood or my area, whether it be my daughter's soccer game and parents, and they'll have other older kids who are playing in bands, and I think it's great. So, and even knowing kids in high school, if I played drums for the theater group or the dance group, they were into things I never would have listened to otherwise. So I think sharing your passions, even within one idiom of being music, it's a powerful thing. And if you don't close yourself off and you open your mind to it, you're going to expand your knowledge. You're going to expand what's good about music to you.